You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
Thor: The Dark World is not a well-loved film in the MCU, though it's getting more respect now than it was originally. Now, part of the problem has to do with the director issues. Originally, Patty Jenkins was brought on, and that didn't work out. They had creative differences. So then they brought on Alan Taylor, and Alan Taylor came from Game of Thrones. Now, what's funny is, in between, Tom Hiddleston volunteered to direct the film, but they only turned him down because he had zero directing experience. Well, the problem with bringing in Taylor is that Taylor was coming off of Game of Thrones and wanted to make a serious fantasy movie, and Marvel wanted something a little more lighthearted and humorous. And in the end, Marvel made the movie they wanted to make. Now, Taylor said that he had full creative freedom in making the film, but when it came time to actually putting it together, he was locked out of the editing suite, as he put it, and he really wasn't happy with the final product. Now, one of the biggest complaints that you hear about the film is that they say Christopher Eccleston's character was really underused. You know, you have a guy like Eccleston come in, you know, Doctor Who, and he's a good actor, and then you barely give him any screen time. Well, the problem is that the original Don Payne script, and Don Payne wrote the first movie and the second movie before he passed away. Now, the problem was that Don had no intentions of having Loki in the movie. You know, he was in the first Thor movie, but they weren't going to have him in the second one. And then the reaction to Tom Hiddleston's portrayal came out, and how much everybody loved Loki and how well he did in the Avengers. So Marvel decided to wedge him into the Dark World. And it kind of at the expense of Malekith and the Dark Elves. Well, this I really think was the big negative thing, because, you know, that's, like I said, everybody says that Eccleston was underused, but what's kind of worse is that Eccleston wasn't the first choice for Malekith. They had actually gone to both Benedict Cumberbatch and Mads Mikkelsen for the character before they went to Eccleston. So both of them, of course, came back in Doctor Strange and joined the MCU then. And I think Mikkelsen was a little underused as Caecilius. I think most Marvel villains are underused. But that being said, if there is a director's cut out there, I'm kind of curious, or even if it was just a script, I'd love to read it to see what the original plan was and what Taylor shot. So there's a lot of DC movies that we talk about, the director's cuts and stuff, but this is the one Marvel one I really wish we could see the director's cut of. So, and we are talking about Thor today. There'll be lots of Thor stuff. So stick around. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. It is, August 23rd? Wow. It is hard to believe we're already the 23rd of August, isn't it? This year is just flying by. All right, we got a lot of fun people here in the house already. We got Triple B, we got Ed, Sheldon, Cool, Clayton, Artist JD. Good to see you guys. Glad you are here. We are going to be talking about Thor. We've got some news to cover, but then we're going to talk about. There's been a rumor lately, and I'm not a big proponent of some of these rumors because a lot of it is just websites throwing stuff out there to get people to click. But what they were talking about is that a Thor 5 was being talked about. And while I don't know if they're going to do a Thor 5, I don't necessarily think that's in the works right now. I think there is a storyline that could make for a very interesting Thor 5 that I would like to see, and we're going to talk about it. Give you my idea of a big event that happened that I think they could use and make a really good Thor movie, especially coming off of Love and Thunder. So Bronze has a question. Says, my question is, should Taika be allowed to direct Thor 5? On one hand, Ragnarok was one of my favorite movies. On the other hand, Love and Thunder is one of my least. I'm mixed on that. I like Taika Waititi as a director, and I like the freedom he gives, but I think the problem was Ragnarok he handled the different tones better. When you're talking about the destruction of a fantasy land, I think that people don't take it as serious. So when you jump back and forth tonally between the comedy we get with the Grandmaster and, Gladiator Hulk and all of that stuff mixed with of Ragnarok and the destruction of Asgard, it switches back and forth pretty seamlessly. When it came to Love and Thunder, you're trying to switch between the humor and almost dating, love story between Jane and Thor with the very serious God Butcher story, which didn't get enough play. But you're also trying to deal with cancer. And I don't know anybody who hasn't been negatively affected by cancer, whether themselves, a loved one, a close friend. That is a topic that I think you cannot easily switch tonally back and forth. When you bring up stage 4 cancer, I think just about everybody knows what that means. So I think that's the biggest problem with Love and Thunder, is that you try to handle this very serious moment, and then you do silly comedy like him getting into a disagreement with the axe, and it doesn't flow. So to me, that's the biggest problem. And they really didn't spend enough time with Gore the God Butcher to give him the screen time. They spent so much time on all the other stuff. Oh, we got to go visit the Greek gods, and oh, we need Russell Crowe in a skirt, and they spent so much time on the humor that they didn't give us enough time to deal with the seriousness, and the switching of the tonality really didn't work because of the topic. But that's just my opinion on it. JD says, I don't fault Taika Waititi for the awful Thor 4. He just made the movie he wanted to make. I have a problem with Marvel letting him go ham with franchise. Shame on you, Kevin. Yeah. If they do let him direct another one, they need to reel him in a bit. But when I get to what it is I want to do, I think a different director may be the way to go. Almost wish they would go back to Kenneth Branagh, bring it back around to the first one. But Sheldon says Taika was not the director to handle Gore with other areas. What he wanted to address. Make Thor 5 R-rated. Interesting. JD says, I agree. Going serious after Goof Fest is a hard sell. It might work in Thor 5. Starts off hammy, but we kill Thor. send him to Valhalla, and we all know it's gotten serious again, a redemption short story of sorts. That's not bad. Not bad. But again, let me blast through the news, and then we'll focus on Thor for the rest of the show. All right. If you guys are as old as me, you may remember a TV series called Space 1999. It ran from 1975 to 1977. It starred Barbara Bain and Martin Landau, who were married at the time and were both on Mission Impossible. They went into this series. Well, Barbara Bain is going to lead a documentary about the spaceship from that series called The Eagle. And the documentary is going to be called The Eagle Has Landed. And besides Barbara Bain, it's also going to have Apollo, I got to do the math, 16 astronaut Charles Duke Jr., Academy Award winner visual effects artist Bill George, who did Blade Runner and a bunch of Star Trek, and Brian Johnson, the VFX artist for Space 1999, who George Lucas has credited for being a big influence on Star Wars. Now, the film is being directed and produced by Jeffrey Morris, who is also hosts the documentary. And The Eagle Has Landed is going to explore the cross-generational impact of that iconic vessel. In the series, it also starred Martin Landau. Like I said, according to the press release, the film showcases never-before-seen archival footage, which will be cool, and will be released in time for the 50th anniversary of the series in 2025. If you're not familiar with Space 1999, it appeared on TV for just a couple years shortly after the Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. So, I mean, it was kind of the impetus for it. Morris noted in a statement, the show's unforgettable Eagle inspired a generation to envision a future in space and is still doing so decades later. The question why explore is the question we explore is why. What is it with this imaginary craft that has captured and held imagination for nearly 50 years? And from what I understand, the original Millennium Falcon was going to be a similar design to the Eagle. And when they saw it, they went, oh, we have to change it now. And that's how we ended up with Joe Johnston creating the Millennium Falcon that we see today. All right, moving on to last night, we saw the debut of Ahsoka. And while I don't want to talk about that one, we're going to spend tomorrow talking about Ahsoka. I haven't even watched it yet. I do know that the episode is dedicated to Ray Stevens, who died on May 21st in Italy. And there's a placard that reads at the end of the episode, for our friend Ray. Now, Stevenson, of course, was born in Northern Ireland. He has a sizable role in Ahsoka, playing Baylan Skoll, who travels the galaxy with an apprentice, Shin Hati, played by Ivana Shachno. And again, I don't want to get much into it, but he's a big part of the series. Ray was a great Frank Castle, but Ray will always be Rome for me was where I first came across Ray Stevenson and absolutely loved him. He voiced Gar Saxon in the Clone Wars and Rebel series. He was also in RRR, the Divergent franchise. He was in Vikings, and of course, Volstagg in the Thor franchise. So we're continuing with our Thor connection here. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. I agree. Okay. Sounds awesome. That's true. Ray's still my favorite Frank Castle. I saw a movie starring Martin Landau and Donald Pleasance called Alone in the Dark, not the game, a horror about escaped mental asylum patients who want to kill their new doctor. Donald Pleasance is just awesome, and Martin Landau and him together. I haven't seen the movie, but now I want to check it out because I mean Donald Pleasance in the original Halloween movies. I mean, just damn. So, all right, let's again. Speaking of Thor, as part of the upcoming Blu-ray release of Loki season 1, they're saying there is a Thor deleted scene of sorts. Yeah, there's a coronation scene for Loki there's a point where Mobius is kind of reviewing some of the moments from Loki's timeline, and there's a coronation scene, and in the coronation scene, and this got cut, but there was a part of it was in the original trailer. Well, in the coronation scene, we get to see Throg, the Frog of Thunder. I just love that. I love that the Walt Simonson Thor gets turned into a frog, that he's supposed to pop up. Well, that's going to appear. From back in an interview, and we knew it was going to come, but we didn't know if we knew it was there, but we didn't know it was actually going to be released. But there was an interview back in 2021 from the composer who talked about the scene, and that was Natalie Holt, who said there was a moment in episode 1 when Mobius is showing Loki his life. There were more moments in there. I think they just kind of cut it down to kind of give it a bit more focus. But there was a few extra moments in there, and that Frog of Thunder moment was one of them. I had done something with the choir for it. It was like this big, grand moment where Loki takes over the crown of Asgard, and then you see Thor as a frog, and Chris Hemsworth was supposed to do the voice. So hopefully we're supposed to get that on the Blu-ray. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. The Marvel's producer, Mary Livanos, is talking about Miss Marvel being included in the Marvel's film, and how she's they're talking about her in similar way how Kate Bishop was for Hawkeye, in that kind of hero worship moment, because we know that Ivan Vellani's character is just, worships Brie Larson's character. Well, in the interview, Livanos says, we all are prone to fall into similar trappings when it comes to hero worship. You think that heroes can fix any problem, but in this movie, we actually examine how sometimes decisions you make in an attempt to make things better can sometimes make things worse, and have a cascading effect that spirals out of control. So while we see Carol Danvers grappling with what has become of her actions, we see that also processed through the eyes of Miss Marvel. We actually experience forgiveness through the eyes of another person. That can be freeing for the person who might not be able to forgive themselves. Miss Marvel has this ideal view of Carol Danvers, and to see that stripped back and Miss Marvel get to know her hero for who she actually is an interesting deconstruction that really warmed our heart. So that's kind of interesting. I like that idea. Who foresaw Froggo Odinson making an appearance, and Waititi isn't behind it? Yeah, that's pretty funny. If anybody was going to do it, I thought it would be Taika. Dr. Loomis, yes, Dr. Loomis from Halloween. Hey, Kenneth, how you doing? Okay, and then we got two more bits of news real quick. One is a little bit spoilery for What If Season 2. They've released some because all this stuff is getting delayed so much because of the pandemic and the strikes and stuff. But the toys always get made faster. So the toys are constantly a spoiler. And in this case, there is an upcoming Marvel Legends line of toys that has a Build-A-Figure, and the Build-A-Figure is the Hydra Stomper. Now, if you didn't watch What If, you're missing out. There's some great episodes. But the Hydra Stomper is in this scenario where Peggy Carter gets the super soldier serum, and Steve Rogers, still scrawny, ends up getting an armored suit created by Howard Stark that is powered by the Tesseract, and they call it the Hydra Stomper. Well, at the end of the episode, Peggy ends up in the future and working for S.H.I.E.L.D. But after the whole battle with Ultron, the big finale of season 1, Peggy discovers that the Hydra Stomper still exists, but we don't know who's in it or what's going on. Well, this Build-A-Figure has a swappable head sculpt, and other than the helmet for the Hydra Stomper, it looks like Steve Rogers' head. So this kind of gives away the fact that not only does the Hydra Stomper survive, but the Steve Rogers survives, and it's possibly in a Bucky Barnes kind of Winter Soldier way. That's been the speculation. So looks like we know we're going to get another Peggy Carter story in season 2, just like we know we're getting the Gamora Tony Stark on Sakaar story, and that it's going to and then the Peggy Carter one will involve the Hydra Stomper. So what the other episodes, don't know yet. And then our final story to cover, James Gunn has once again responded to fans' questions on social media, and at some point James needs to just stay offline. He's not helping anymore. You know, once the actor strike is over, stuff like that, just go work, stay offline. Anyway, this is kind of an odd way he responded. A follower was asking him about the number of characters that seem to be lining up for Superman Legacy. You know, they've talked about, oh, the Authority's going to be in it. And now it looks like you got a version of the Justice League of some kind with Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific, and Metamorpho. So you've got this group already. And the guy asked him, well, aren't you worried that there's going to be so many characters that Superman's not really going to get enough time to shine? And Gunn responded with, I don't understand this fear. There are less characters here than in the 40-Year-Old Virgin. Did you think Steve Carell got enough time? Now, I totally appreciate his response, because you can look at movies with a ton of characters and you still see certain characters get the time they need. I think of the recent Dune movie, the first part. You know, Paul gets plenty of time to establish Paul, but there are a ton of characters in the Dune movie. So I'm not that worried about it. But of all the movies he chooses to use as his example, the 40-Year-Old Virgin seems really freaking random. Unless Gunn was making a commentary about how what you might consider somebody who's concerned about a superhero movie that won't be made for 2 years. Just saying. It does seem really random. Let's take our first break, and we're coming back to talk about Thor. Be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds, a promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com today.
everybody, welcome back. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons that are right down there. I'd appreciate it. We got a great lineup today, lots of fun stuff. We got comics collectibles starting at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We have Talk and Treat Trivia. We have Kicking It with Henri. That's a lot of good stuff coming up. There's no 360 comics tonight. He's got some stuff he's dealing with, so we send him our best wishes and hope he's back soon. All right. So let me address something JD said. James Gunn called The Flash the best superhero movie, best comic movie ever. It's hard to get around that. That really was not a great thing to say. And I'm not going to defend him. I could see perhaps he looked at the movie and went, well, once they get the special effects done, it's going to be great. And the special effects are one of the biggest knocks against the movie. And so it is possible that he thought there would be better special effects. And maybe this version he saw didn't have the babies. I'd like to think that maybe the version he saw didn't have the babies. But that's about all I can defend. Was The Flash really that bad? Clayton, if you have HBO Max or Max, you will be able to find out in 2 nights, as it will be on Max. I have not seen all of it. I've seen most of it. And a lot of what I saw was actually not bad. But the special effects are really poor, especially in the big finale scene where we're supposed to have all those cameos. And I think those take away a lot from the movie, and the baby sequence is really bad. So Braun says, to be fair, he said in a GQ interview what his top 5 comic movies, and Flash wasn't on that list. He may have misspoke. That's fair enough. And he may just be trying to make enough money to do his movies, because he needs Warner Brothers to make money off these movies. So JD found it to be fun. A little bit meaningless, but felt like it had no stakes. Yeah. I don't hate the Flash movie. Trust me, there are movies I hate. Fantastic Four 2015. But I wouldn't call it the best superhero movie. I'm not even sure. Clayton says, I've seen it and enjoyed it. Don't understand the hate besides the Ezra Miller being a terrible human. You know what? I tend to divorce myself from the person and the actor. And I do that because when it comes to a movie, there are so many people working on it that if they did these things while the film was being made or after the film was being made, then the studio didn't know this guy was what he was, or this person was what he was. I need to use the proper pronouns for them. So I don't hold that against the studio. Now, if they hire them again, then that's the problem with the studio. But there are so many people that work on a film, I don't want to penalize them for one person's actions that nobody knew about prior to the movie beginning or being filmed. Put that aside, I have not enjoyed Ezra's portrayal of Barry Allen. I like Grant Gustin's version. I like the comic versions. I like Barry being a little scattered-brained occasionally, usually late, but a genius. What Ezra did with the character is just annoying. So, Slip says The Flash was just a mess. Was it really the Flash movie people had been waiting decades to see? Probably not. Did you think Marvel's needs to reboot itself? I don't know. It's buzz right now. I have not I'm not buying any of the buzz that's out there right now. Could they give us a new Cap and a new Iron Man after, the end of Phase 6? It's possible, but until, I'm not even going to really worry about that. I don't think so. They've got so many characters, but I'm not going to worry about it until we actually get some real confirmation. Because right now, a lot of the websites are just throwing this stuff out there and then running off of the other website stuff just to get clicks because they're trying to make money. So I'm not going to worry about that one right now. Clayton says, exactly, Dan, hit the nail on the head. It's not everyone else's fault. Right. Figure says, Barry was insufferable and so dumb. Yeah, I don't like Ezra's portrayal of Barry Allen. And the younger version was even worse. So, let's see. JD says, true, I don't think your average Flash fan would use the word neurotic virgin to describe Barry Allen. Definitely not. So, all right, guys, let's put that topic aside and talk about Thor. Now, this is another rumor. This is another rumor that people are just throwing out there, that there's a Thor 5 in the works. And there's already people coming out saying, no, it's not. And the truth is, there is nothing in the works right now. There's the movies that were announced, but there's no new stuff announced because there's strikes. We don't know what's going to happen. So that said, I do like the thought process of what Thor 5 should be. And because the franchise has gone good movie, not so good movie, really good movie, really bad movie. So how do we bring it back up? I don't think bringing Taika back is the way to go. And even Chris Hemsworth has said that he'd want to see growth and maturity with Thor if he came back to the role. So I am completely on board with that. I think you need to pay off the end credit scene with Hercules. And part of that is because I think having, was it Brett Goldstein, come in with the popularity he has off of Ted Lasso is a great idea. And I think Hercules as a foil for Thor is great. And you could do the lighthearted stuff in the beginning. But when Christian Bale was first announced and everybody was like, oh, he's going to be Gore the God Butcher, I was hoping that they were going to go a different direction. I was hoping that he was going to play Bor, or was it Kerr? Excuse me, Thor's uncle, Odin's brother, and that we were going to have an adaptation of Fear Itself. Now, if you're not familiar with the Fear Itself storyline, it's that the Thor's hammer Mjolnir is one of the hammers of worth, and that there's 7 others. And the story actually involves, of all people, the Red Skull, and that one of the hammers of worth existed on Earth since back in Nordic times, or Norse times. And Red Skull was able to find it, but he wasn't worthy to pick it up. And he found it, he hid it away, and his daughter eventually discovers it. And in doing so, she ends up freeing, because Asgard's destroyed at this point anyway, she ends up freeing Kerr, Odin's older brother, who says he should be on the throne, who is also known as the Serpent God, or the God of Fear, and he releases the other 6 hammers of worth. And when they basically come in contact with somebody, they sort of take over, making them somewhat evil. And you end up with some very unique characters getting a hold of the hammers. And you end up with Um, Juggernaut gets one. The Hulk, Titania, and Atuma get the first 4, and they become Kurth, Breaker of Stone, Null, Breaker of Worlds, Skirin, Breaker of Men, and Nurkad, Breaker of Oceans. So you could probably guess which one's which. Then later, the other 3 are released, and they end up in the hands of the Great Gargoyle, the Thing, and the Absorbing Man, and they become Mach, Breaker of Faith, Angerer, Breaker of Souls, and Graithoth, Breaker of Wills. So you end up with 7 people who are all kind of controlled to be evil with these hammers that make them the equivalent of Thor, power-wise. Though Thor is the god of lightning, so that it really amplifies these guys' character powers. So I could see them starting off with Hercules trying to track down Thor, and you could actually bring back the Red Skull for the start of this, which I think would be great, and have him in the prelude, and even you could actually have him, the one that kind of kicks this whole thing off. The Thor movies usually are about family, so you end up with stuff like, first he goes up against his brother, then he goes up against his sister. So having him go up against his uncle, finding out that some of the stuff about his own dad. This is also when the Asgardians leave Earth. So there's a lot of stuff that's already kind of set up for the Fear Itself storyline. But again, they don't have to copy it directly. But 7 Hammers of Worthy. Hey, Amani. Yeah, the 7 Hammers of Worth, excuse me. So you have to be worthy to lift one of the hammers. And it is a really interesting storyline. And a lot of stuff happens in it. Captain America, his shield gets destroyed, but Iron Man builds him a new one, combining it with Uru, the mystical metal from Asgard. Iron Man gets an armor made of Uru. He also makes weapons for people like Spider-Man and the Red She-Hulk, stuff like that. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff. Now you could boil that down into a smaller story. You don't even have to have 7 hammers, but you could, again, go into the story. You have a reason to bring back Anthony Hopkins again. You have Hercules, you have Thor, you have, he's going to need help to take these guys on. So Hercules becomes an ally. There's a lot of positive stuff that could go on with this. You could give the hammers to existing characters, or you could make them new characters. Again, you got a lot of stuff you can do. You could give one to Jane and just have that. I think Jane's dead now. Ooh, give one to Darcy. How weird would that be? Suddenly Darcy's a villain. That would be fun. But the idea of these hammers of worth, see, I thought that's what they were going to do with the last story, because then that would explain how Jane got a hammer and how, and then you could bring in Beta Ray Bill. Yeah, you could absolutely bring Beta Ray Bill into this as well. That would be a good way to introduce Beta Ray Bill. Also, I think Thor dies in this story. He ends up coming back, but it would be a good way to, if you wanted to write Chris Hemsworth out and put Beta Ray Bill in. There's a lot you could do with it, but I think it's a storyline. Plus, Thor Fear Itself would be a great title for a movie. And there was, like I said, it involves a lot of characters, and you could do one of those big character things, how they did Civil War and brought in a bunch of characters. You could have Rhodey ends up with a hammer, or Abomination ends up with a hammer. you got a lot of characters you could give them to. Titania is introduced in She-Hulk, so she could get one. I just think that you could start it off with the lighter humor, having him go up against Hercules, and have both of them taking it kind of lightly because, yes, you hurt my father, but he's still alive. And, oh, yes, we're having a grand battle. And then you turn it serious when, somebody loses their life. Maybe you kill Korg. Yeah, I think killing Korg may be the way to go. And then you could bring in somebody like Beta Ray Bill, who is maybe he gets one of the hammers, but he is his willpower is strong enough to overcome it, and then you still got the other 6 to deal with. There's a lot of options they can do there. Data says Thor and Loki is a great movie and series for fantasy genre. They need someone who is great at this and explore it. Yeah, I would like to see them kind of go back towards the fantasy side. That's why one of the things I said earlier was going back to Kenneth Branagh, who I think did a great job on the first movie. If you asked me, I think Ragnarok is a good movie, but for me, the first Thor movie is the best Thor movie because it is a Thor movie where I don't see Ragnarok as being a Thor movie. It's a Marvel movie. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I got to go with the first Thor one. I don't have a problem with Dark World. I actually like Dark World in a lot of ways. And I like it more now that we're getting more context. But I would love to see what, if there was more to Malekith, what got cut, stuff like that. I'd love to see that. How about Russell T. Davies? I don't know. He's very tied up with the Doctor right now, but also I love how he handles the Doctor, but I don't know if I've seen enough to make me think he could jump to movies. I'd almost go with, and I'm going to get sacrilege for this, I'd almost go with Stephen Moffat over Russell T. Davies. It says they really love the Asgardian introduction. It gave me goosebumps. Yeah, see, I want to see them go back to fantasy. What about Peter Jackson? Imagine Peter Jackson coming in and doing the final or doing the 5th movie. I think that could be a lot of fun. But yeah, there's some good fantasy directors out there. And yeah, I'd like to see it go more fantasy than sci-fi. Sheldon says, I really love, yeah. Sheldon says, agreed. I have watched the first Thor at least double every other movie. Yeah, again, to me, that's a Thor movie. It's like Winter Soldier is a fantastic movie. But I also really love First Avenger for what Joe Johnston did in making a 1940s war movie. So I look at them based on what they were supposed to be, and to me, the first Thor movie is the best Thor fantasy movie. But yeah, I'd love to see them do something like that. Start it off with the humor, and then put Thor and Hercules together. Kill off Korg, especially if you're not going to keep Taika Waititi around, because then you've got the flip that makes it serious. And by bringing the Hammers of Worth in, you've got Marvel's favorite thing to do, which is make a villain with the same powers as the hero. You could bring Beta Ray Bill in as one of them, and his willpower allows him to break free and become a hero. And then you've got the other 6. You got 3 against 6. I mean, you can do some good stuff there. There's a lot of potential to it, and I'd love to see them do that. Straczynski would be an interesting choice to write it. Yeah, he did a good job on Thor. You could work from the Jason. I don't remember who did Fear Itself, but you've got your basis there, and you could bring in a lot of characters too. So if you want to do it where it's kind of a Civil War level thing, and you're bringing a bunch of heroes in, or you could streamline it and make it smaller, but you still got the threat. So I think it would be interesting. And if you kill Thor and bring him back, you could also touch on the whole Valhalla thing, and with Jane and all that going on. So there's a lot to do, a lot you could do there by dealing with Fear Itself. And then you just need to get a good actor to play what would be Odin's brother. And there's some really good actors out there that you could tap into. Brian Cox from Succession. He would be an interesting choice. Yeah, there'd be some really cool stuff to go on there. Fear Itself is Matt Fraction. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, and Fraction just did a TV series. He's got a TV series that got picked up. So he's working Hollywood side now. What's the series? It just got announced last week. Not going to come to me. So, all right. Let's go ahead and wrap that up there. We got a few key collectibles to go over. Ed says, I want Zack Snyder cut of Thor. Totally kidding. Way to fire things up, Ed. So, all right, we're going to take our break. We'll come back. We'll do some key collectibles. So be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time. According to a statistic that I just made up, people spend 4 hours a day changing the television channel. People who watch The Experience don't do that. Save yourself a ton of time by tuning into The Experience and enjoying our new original programming 7 days a week. And then tell your friends. Think about the money they could save on batteries in the remote alone just by tuning into The Experience. Find out more by scanning the QR code below.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Hit the like, subscribe buttons, all that stuff. Fraction's Hawkeye run was great. Yes, it was. Fraction's a good guy too. I've known him for quite a few years. Both he and Kelly Sue are very good writers. All right, so let's talk Fear Itself comics. Now, Fear Itself was an interesting series. It came out in 2011. It had a main story and a bunch of sub-stories, and it was huge. It was a big event. But the interesting thing is that the majority of the books are still right around cover price. So if any of me telling you about this stuff gets you interested, you can still pick these up probably for cover price or less. Look in the dollar bins at your local store. So we start off with Fear Itself #1. This is where we're introduced to Cole Borson, Bor being the father of Odin and Cole. So he's also known as the Serpent, and he's Thor's uncle. And this goes for $3, high end. You can probably pick it up at a dollar bin. Then we got Fear Itself #7, and this is where we first see the Uru, Spider-Man's Uru suit. We get a bunch of different weapons created. We get a new shield for Cap, and we get an Uru armor for Iron Man. And we get this one actually is the one that's gone up in value because of that. $15 on the high end, $5 on the median, still $1 on the low end. Then we had Fear Itself 7.2. This was part of an epilogue they did. There was like 7.1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're introduced to a group here, Spider-Man's Uru, URU, the same thing that made Thor's hammer. This is the full appearance of the All-Mother. You know how Odin was the All-Father? And this was a triumvirate of Gaia, Freya, and Idun. So those are not the values of this book. This is another $3 to $1 book. So Black Panther got a miniseries off of this where he became American Panther. And it was Black Panther, the Man Without Fear, number 521. So this was the part of that. And it was drawn by Franco Francavilla, who is an amazing artist. So just that alone is reason to pick up this book. Then we have Fear Itself. It did a Hulk versus Dracula one-shot or miniseries, 3-issue miniseries. This goes again 3, 2, and 1, and it's the first appearance of Legat, who's the head of a bunch of vampires. We have Fear Itself: The Deep, #1, another miniseries, and this has Necrod, who was Adama, who got the hammer, just basically conquering Atlantis and kicking Namor out. We have Fear Itself: The Fearsome Foursome, which has pretty interesting team up. You got She-Hulk, Howard the Duck, Nighthawk, and Frankenstein's Monster as the new Fearsome Four. Again, 3, 2, and 1, and Man-Thing's in it too. But Man-Thing should be in everything. He really should. Then we got Fear Itself: Wolverine, and this is him basically taking on a fully armed helicarrier of people. So this is just Wolverine at his best, going crazy. And then we have Fear Itself: Black Widow, and this has her teaming up with a character who, if you don't know the character Peregrine, Peregrine was one of the heroes they created years ago in Contest of the Champions when they needed international heroes, and they created Shamrock and Sabra, who's going to be in the upcoming Captain America movie. Peregrine was a French hero who could fly, and Peregrine is the French word for falcon. So he was basically just Falcon, but the French Falcon. So and here he is years later showing up in this. And then Fear Itself: Youth in Revolt. This has the character of Prodigy putting together a new team similar to the way Avengers Initiative was. Captain America has him do this. So yeah, they had a bunch of spin-off series and stuff, and they all had the big title at the top, so it's easy to find them. So I think that's the last one, right? Yeah. So it's pretty interesting series if you get a chance to read it. They have collected all the stuff. It's like 6 or 7 or 8 trades, but you could pick these up, like I said, in your back issue bin at your local comic shop for probably cheaper than the price of the trades, because they just really haven't gone that up much in value. Again, other than the one where we get Spider-Man's new Ulu suit. So if Fear itself interests you, check out your local comic shops. If you don't know where your local comic shops are, check out comicshoplocator.com. Yeah, I think Kyle will appreciate a quick plug there. All right, guys, we are going to wrap it up there. If you get a chance, watch the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka, as we will be talking about that tomorrow, and there will be spoilers, so I need to go watch it myself. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.